Welcome back, everybody, to another installment of Two Legs. We are a Paul McCartney podcast where we mainly feature discussion on the solo work of Paul McCartney. Joining me today is my partner in crime, my co-host Tom Hunyadi. You might recognize him from his other show that he does, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast with Joe Mayo, Ken Michaels, and Kid O'Toole. Tom, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful, buddy. Another kick-ass topic. I can't wait to discuss.
Yeah,
And yeah,
different kind of
different
show,
take.
different
Yeah.
take, and a
Yep.
unique guest. And for episode 176 today, we have in the OG fan, my dad, John Nicholes, here to talk about Ram, McCartney collecting, and really what it was like to experience and listen to McCartney in real time when this stuff came out. Mainly Ram because it was really kind of just it was not really well received critically when it
No.
first came out, and many people who bought that album at the time really felt otherwise. And I'm proud to say my dad was one of those people, and we're going to talk to him today about McCartney and Ram in particular, but really kind of his collecting and kind of his entering the Beatles world and being a first generation Beatle fan as he's proudly been his whole life and passed down to me. So welcome to the show, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, nice to meet you, and looking forward to hearing your story. Andy. Ram. I mean, it was so criticized, by the critics. Then in '71, and his. I mean, they were just beating him up. I mean, he was taking the blunt of the blame, right, for the Beatles breaking up. And but the cool thing was is the what the bad reviews that he was getting, it didn't really necessarily show in sales, and I mean, and how his albums and singles did in the charts. I mean, except for maybe Wildlife there, but then for most of his career in especially in the '70s, you know, chart wise, you know, there wasn't too many that were better than him.
Right. Critics be damned.
Right,
Commercially, he was still. I think that's an example of showing how the buying public really just says, "Well, screw what they wrote. We're going to buy it anyway because we like it."
right, right, right.
You
So
know, and
true.
you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah,
So,
I hear you. I hear
um,
you.
so Dad, just tell us a little bit about your kind of entry into. But we'll take it back into Beatle days and then work our way up into the McCartney and Ram and stuff like that and Wings. But talk about your initial kind of introduction to music, the Beatles as a whole, and buying albums and collecting them as they came out when they came out in the '60s.
Yeah.
Our house was always there was music always going in the house. My mom listened to a contemporary radio station for those days in the '50s. They played American standard, pop standard stuff, and my dad was a pub singer and
Oh, cool.
uh, liked liked the crooners, and we had a lot of that stuff on our record players.
Did you have one of those big console like record players? You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about with the big speakers on the sides.
yeah. It didn't have a TV in it, but it was about 6 feet long.
Wow. Yeah, I
It's like a
remember those. Those were cool.
it's like a piece of furniture for in the
Yeah,
living
yeah,
room.
exactly.
It was probably the biggest thing in the house at the time.
Um, so let's yeah, we talk about some early memories there with the musical kind of and things that you
Yeah,
heard,
I,
remembered.
I'm apologizing because of course the lawnmower guys are here, and I'm
Oh, well, of course.
picking
Yeah.
that up.
No, a
Right.
little bit, but it's not bad. We can hear you, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, so I liked my parents' music. I didn't cringe from it, but when I started to hear Buddy Holly and the Everly Brothers singing, and that spoke out to me a little bit more. That I felt that they were speaking to my age group. So
Okay. How
so that
how? Oh, go ahead.
pre
I'm sorry.
Beatles. That's who you know I was into. To as much as a an 8-year-old kid can be. But
Right.
that's who I like. But once the Beatles came on the radar screen,
Right.
uh, New York radio was gaga over them. They they promoted all their songs, and probably I think Ed Sullivan had a lot to do with that because his roots are in radio, and he probably had a lot of connections. Having seen them in England, he probably let them know that these guys are going to be big.
Right. Do you remember how much in advance? I mean, Beatles were in February of '64. Do you remember how much in advance prior to that you got the radio stations pushing the Beatles?
Well, I would say probably 6 months prior, but I think after the Kennedy assassination, it really picked up steam.
So November of '63.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
wow.
they were already come December, they were already scheduled to come here anyway. So that capital really started to get behind that machine of the Beatles are coming, and building that hype. And I think that hysteria is between November and December of '63 carries over into the early '64, and obviously their arrival, which I'm sure you saw on TV, right, Dad?
Oh yeah, I was there. Hands on chin, about 6 inches from the screen.
Wow. So what was that experience like? I mean, you knew that was coming, right? I mean, was this like one of those things where, I mean, just time just stands still and everybody is in? It just seems like everybody we talked to that lived it just like, I mean, time just stood still and everybody on the planet was just living, or in the USA, anyways, was just watching and experiencing this group from Liverpool.
Yeah, well, we kind of knew the songs by then. I Want to Hold Your Hand. I think Please Please Me. A couple of their early hits, Love Me Do, and
Right.
So it was got a charge out of seeing them perform those songs. So that was a big charge for me. And it was to finally see them was
In the flesh, on TV.
Right.
It was after all that, and much to the chagrin of the elders, right?
Well, my mom kind of liked them. She just had a problem with the hair. Watch what
Oh, really? The long hair, right?
Yeah. And
Which
my
wasn't
dad-
really that long to be. I mean, if to be honest, it wasn't really that long.
Well, but when
well,
you think
compared to
about,
then it was.
well, right, because like in the 1950s, everybody's got crew cuts, right? So,
Yeah.
Well, you either had a crew cut or you had it all slicked back.
Mm-hmm.
What they used to call a DA, short
Right.
for yes.
right, right. So yeah. So in '64, you're 10 or 11 years old, and you're obviously into them and enjoying them, but you're not yet really buying records and collecting albums yet at that point, right?
No, that's a few years away yet.
Yeah. The then throughout the '60s, I mean, are you continuing to grow into a major Beatles fan as their music is coming out year by year, or are you also following other musical acts as well?
Well, the Beach Boys, were big, in my circle of friends and all too. And another moment with the Beatles that kind of cemented me with them was the movie A Hard Day's Night and the song A Hard Day's Night.
Right.
The opening to A Hard Day's Night was it just grabbed you by the shirt.
Right.
And then the last chord cinched it for me. When George goes on that little riff at the end of the song, I said, these are my guys.
That's very cool.
But now, did you see that movie in the theaters, Dad, or no?
I don't think I saw that in the theaters. I saw Help in the theaters a few times.
Okay.
But Hard Day's Night, I might have saw it the second time I saw Help. There might have been a
double feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not when it was initially out.
Yeah.
Although
Right.
I went into the movies a couple of times, but by myself, but not for that one.
Yeah. Getting into the later years, 67, 68, I mean, were you still as excited for Beatle releases? I mean, we talked about a couple people where in 67, as the music and the lyrics get a little more sophisticated, people took a like what they call a Beatles break, and then maybe went off to like the Beach Boys or the Monkees or whatever like that. Talk about like that era, 67, 68, and 69 for you as a fan.
we had, and I had such anticipation for when they were going to release a new album. It was palpable, you know, whenever it was coming. And I know now with Andy's tutelage that the American releases and the British releases were entirely different. I didn't know then. I was just, oh no, there's a new album coming out. I can't wait. Gotta hear it. You know, I wasn't buying albums yet, but I just on pins and needles waiting for the next one to come out. And I had like friends. My ended up being my future brother-in-law. We were simpatico when it came to the Beatles, and we would just discuss it like we're doing now.
Well, one of the best analogies I can remember you telling me was that I can remember was when Freeze a Bird came out, and I remember being so excited about that, and you were like, "See this excitement? This is how it was for every time a new single or an album came out," and that's true, right?
Yes, I mean, you know, that was the best way I can explain it to you. I could see it in in your eyes and how you were anticipating everything.
Right.
And it just brought me back.
Right, but. But like going on to like when the music kind of changed a little bit, like Tom was saying, by the time Sergeant Pepper rolls around, now you're starting to buy albums, right?
I was getting them more as gifts, you know.
Okay.
I was working, you know, like as a stock boy, you know, in a grocery store and doing that kind of stuff. But I didn't really have the money to spend on an album, even though they were only about $3 or $4. But that was more money for me at the time. But I started to listen to The Who, not so much the Stones. I like some of the Stones songs, but a whole album from them really didn't do it for me. But The Who were up there, and I, you know, trying to think of some other songs. And a little later on, the Prog stuff started coming out, and I was a big Yes fan. I'm a big
you don't say. Anyways, but if you could, you know, it's like 67, 68. I mean, describe the Four. I mean, how did you feel about the Fours as individuals? I mean, well, who was your favorite at the time? Whose music did you were you more gravitated towards, at that time? Talk about the Four individuals and what your guys' perception of them was at that time.
Well, at that time, we were mainly focused on John and Paul, mostly John, I would say. He was the perceived leader of the group at that time. Right. And he was so witty whenever he would be interviewed or something. It was kind of like must listen to when he was on the air, And
it was almost like shock radio at the time, for them, because like you said, it's almost like, what is he going to say next? That's
the whole where we're better than God or we're greater.
That
whole controversy. The people overreacted to big time. That was there. I kind of read through what he was trying to say, and it didn't bother me at all. And I thought the only time I really thought of Paul as an individual was when he did Michelle, and he was alone on stage. And I think it was probably Shindig or Hullabaloo, one of those shows. And I'm like, this isn't good. The other guys aren't out there with him. What's with this? I don't like this.
Right. Yeah, when he would get his solo spot for Michelle or Yesterday during one of those shows. Yeah.
And and to me, George and Ringo were still in the background, and I loved their bits in the movies that they were in, and thought they had a really good stage presence and everything. But it was mostly John and Paul, and I just liked the ebb and flow of going into like Rubber Soul and and then the more psychedelic stuff, that's where they lost my mom.
Okay, yeah. See, that's what I'm always interested in hearing is like when people they say they take that Beatle break, what part of their career was it that they finally said, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna, move on to something else now."
Well, I moved on to other things, but I wouldn't call it a Beatle break. I would call it the Beatles opening doors to me.
Yeah, okay. I like
Like,
that. Yeah.
you know, probably the next band I focused on more than them was Steely Dan,
Okay.
and
Right.
yeah, they just kind of like did a similar thing to me with the Beatles and grabbed me and said, "You got to listen."
Yeah. Right. Right. Were you also looking for literature on the Beatles as well? Were you reading up on them, or were you just listening to the music?
Mostly the music. I would listen to back then. FM radio was a really great resource, especially at night.
Hmm.
They would talk at length about subjects like music and the musicians, and they would sometimes have them on, which was great, especially NEWFM. John was on there quite a bit, and the reading material then was kind of uh, teen type stuff,
Hmm.
heartthrob type things that I never really bought.
No,
Right.
and Rolling Stone launches in 67 or 68, right,
Right.
67. So, journalism is still rock journalism is in this country is still very new and up and coming, but kind of leads us on to where we're going with the conversation with Paul later on. But
Right.
um, talk a little bit about, okay, 1970, the Beatles break up, Shattered, right?
Oh yeah, we used to have a newspaper in New York. Well, it's still around, called the New York Post. But
Mm.
they used to come out with an afternoon edition, and that was the first I saw of that. I
Right.
mean, we would hear snippets about how they were having contractual things going on, and then I saw a 4-inch banner headline on the afternoon paper saying that they split, Beatles
Mm.
split. I think that's what the headline said, but that was,
Right.
I love that memory will always stick with me.
Now,
Oh,
did you get the sense, or was there much literature out there that said it was Paul that broke up the Beatles? Because you see that famous headline in the UK, Paul quits the Beatles. I'm kind of curious if we got that here in the States as well.
I think we were in the Yoko broke up the Beatles camp.
Okay.
People that I associated with.
Right. And they're not able to accept her in the Beatles community. I think there's a lot of people that still can't, accept the fact that, John would fall in love with her, I think.
Which
yeah.
is, it was sad on our part. He totally, has every right to fall in love with who he wants to fall in love with, and we had no
Right.
business feeling the way we did.
Right. By this time, were you getting records 1970, 71? I mean, the Beatles are breaking up. They're starting to release solo records or solo 45s. Did these interest you at the time as well?
Yeah, they did. And it was a big feeling at the time that they would possibly get back together at some point.
Mhm. Mhm.
So our thinking was, and my own thinking was, how would this sound if they were all doing it, man? If this was
Right.
a Beatle album, it'd
Yeah.
be off the charts.
Right.
And it kind of almost did that until it was no longer a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just start with your thoughts on some of the early, some of the solo records or before Ram, like say, All Things Must Pass. Uh, what were your thoughts on that?
I thought it blew me away. It was great. You know,
Mhm.
uh, it just showed what a hidden talent George really was.
Right.
And kind of a the movie Let It Be had been out, and it kind of touched on some of the not as good as the Jackson remake of it, but
Right.
it kind of uh, touched on what George could have contributed. Had he had a little bit more support.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. It was, yeah, I'm still blown away by the fact of what Paul said in the one of the 69 meetings. George is there, John and Paul. Ringo's, I think, in the hospital at the time, and they're talking about the next album. And and then everybody, John, Paul, and George getting 4 tracks each, I think it was. And then Paul just comes out and says, well, I didn't think, up until Abbey Road, I didn't think George's stuff was up to snuff, I mean, and he's sitting right there, you know,
Yeah.
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 so it's pretty amazing. And then here we are, we marvel at stuff like, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Within You Without You, Taxman, stuff like that. And then here he is, he thinks so much less of his music. It's still
Yeah.
kind of mind
Yeah.
boggling.
I think what turned off a lot of them towards George is
The Indian music.
ability was his connection to the Indian and Eastern
Right.
raga type
Right.
music, and I think they really did a split over that because George just was into that whole philosophy, and they were not.
Was that something you would skip over on albums like Revolver and Sgt. Pepper? Would you not want to play those Indian style music yourself? With the sitar?
I liked it. I didn't care for what I would consider some filler pieces like Number 9.
Yeah, Revolution 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My buddies went to the Bangladesh concert. I was working or something. I couldn't go. To my lifelong regret.
Well, but you also had a chance encounter with a certain someone on the street you said hello to about a year or so later. Why don't you tell that story?
We were constantly in the village. We were,
right,
10 or 15-minute train ride away from the city, and would hit all the different spots down there, record stores and stores selling other stuff, and that John and Yoko were being crowded in on a corner somewhere downtown. I forget exactly where, and he had so many people around him. I said he doesn't need enough. When I was with about 3 or 4 guys, so
yeah.
Well, there he is. You're seeing him. He's actually alive in the flesh.
Right. It's funny, you say that because me being, as a tour caterer, I got to, see a lot of, musicians up close. And then you're thinking to yourself, well, should I go up and say hi to them? I've been fortunate enough to be in that position where I would be able to interact, with them. But like you said, your conscience kind of kicks in a little bit. You see a lot of people around them, maybe, he doesn't need another person, coming in up to him. But then again, some people are fearless like that. There's like, oh, there's John Lennon. Let's go say hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt we'd be intruding.
Right. No, and I get that. I get and respect that, But the solo, let's get into Paul here. The solo stuff. Especially let's start off with the first solo record, McCartney. And I'm kind of curious about your take on that, because here's someone that just coming off the heels of of Abbey Road, and then Let It Be and Long and Winding Road, such great polished, finished songs, and here you get this McCartney record, which really doesn't reflect that in a way, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I'm aware that I believe he played every instrument on the album.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you can hear that after if you listen for it, and
right.
it did need some polishing up, but I mean the bass was there, the basic
mm-hmm.
good songs, and the body of work is good.
Yeah,
but it clearly showed that he wasn't really cutting it on his own yet.
Right. Yeah, but the talent you saw, every night, and Maybe I'm Amazed, and Junk, and it was there. But I think a lot of people get, were expecting like Tom said, the hugeness of like Abbey Road type production, and to have a very homespun affair of a record. is a letdown, and I don't think people really understood where he was going with it.
Yeah, maybe if they were a little bit more open about what the production level was, people would maybe understood.
That and then the breakup factor. The breakup factor that Paul was really the nemesis that the media painted as the villain who broke up the Beatles. So albums like McCartney and Ram, which we'll get to, are not really fairly being reviewed by these people. But the buying public knows better, and you were one of them.
Yeah, and that brings me to Andy, you just said it being reviews. Were you a person that read reviews prior to buying the record, or did you wait until after you listened? Did you pay attention to reviews?
I did not pay attention to reviews. I might have picked up a copy of it, a secondhand copy of it, when I heard that they were talking about an album that I had purchased, But I kind of knew where the Rolling Stone guys were. They had a love affair with John Lennon. So, that's the way it was going to be.
Right. Well, what about you too? I mean, were you still a Lennon fan at this point in time? The first, true Lennon record, Plastic Ono Band.
No,
I kind of went other ways. Me and John kind of went our separate ways a little bit.
right, because I can see, like, I remember just growing up looking through your albums. You had the McCartney albums. You had McCartney, Ram, Wildlife, Red Rose Speedway, Band on the Run, Venus and Mars. You had all those albums. You didn't really have a whole lot of John. You had Shay Fish, the greatest hits. So you kind of went more. You said when the Beatles were together, John was like the guy that you might have gravitated towards. But solo wise, you kind of went more in a Paul direction, which is interesting.
I think my philosophy changed towards life a little bit, and what he was proselytizing in his songs didn't always connect with the way I was feeling at the time.
Right.
Without naming any songs,
Right. Maybe alienating a fan base, some part of his fan base. With some of those songs.
Very small portion of that, but I would say yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very interesting, because that's I remember, but it's so funny that you say that, because so many people, well, and you and me, like, we love and Tom, you too, you love the John Beatles material. And well, listen, we love the solo stuff too, but a certain fan base might have been gravitated towards Paul based on what John was doing, because John's solo work is not everybody's cup of tea. It's just it's not. So it's Paul's is a little more accessible. You want to call it lightweight, like these critics did. Fine. You want to call it sugar, like kind of stuff, like an album like Ram that that we're going to get to. I mean, obviously the buying public knew better, Dad.
I had a little bit of a reconnect when he did the rock and roll album, and I thought that was some of the best stuff that he did.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating too, because I tend to find that record to be a little uneven, especially in production. I wish it was. I mean, it's raw, but I think it could even be a little bit more raw. I think it could be even a little bit more stripped. You know what I mean? In a record, but it's fine. But yeah, I mean, I get it, because listening to the Beatles, I generally gravitate towards John too. I mean, I like that rebellious, part of John. I like that, wittiness part of John, like we talked about. And that doesn't mean I don't love Paul stuff. Yeah, I love Paul stuff too, but it just seems like John just was able to grab our attentions more with this stuff in the Beatles. I think when it comes solo, I mean, the stuff like, the Power to the People, Give Peace a Chance. I mean, I think it's all good-hearted, well-attended stuff. But again, it's something you have to be in a certain mood for to listen to.
I view that as a precursor to Shut Up and Sing.
Right. I
Sorry.
hear you. Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I hear you. All right, so let's move on to Ram then, because here we go. Here's the famous Rolling Stone review about this. And Andy, you had talked about how it first received a favorable review first, right? And then the person was told to change the review. Was you know what I mean?
Oh, no, who was no, that was who was telling us that a few weeks back that I know it wasn't from me, but they basically said it was what they did praise it, and they said
Right.
no, you can't do that. You got to, because they were a John
Right.
favor, heavy publication, so they were like, oh no, you got to change that. I think that was for the McCartney review. I think Larry Graves was telling us that last week.
Yeah, that's right. That's
He
right.
was that they had to change it, but I
Right.
think Ram is another case. The album comes out, the original review, John Landau says that Ram is the nadir of
Mhm.
rock music, and
Right.
now, I mean, why? First of all, like, you're not saying that if you don't have a bias. Okay, clearly you have a bias to say that, because the album was received well by fans, of which we're talking to one today who
Number
bought
2 in the States.
number 2 in the States, and here's his original copy, all from 1971, all beat up, still right here. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, he obviously didn't read that. Another bit, it went to number 2. Uncle Albert is a huge hit, number 1.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yep.
I'm sure that song was all over the radio, Dad, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So,
Yep. Probably the main one from that album. I don't think they played much else, as
Okay.
except for the late night guys.
right.
Ram is so incredibly inquisitional and so monumentally irrelevant. You can't even do that with it. It's difficult to concentrate on, let alone dislike or even hate. Um,
that's the
wow.
review. That's the
Yeah.
original
I mean,
review.
that's the first paragraph. I mean, obviously he's talking about self-portrait, prior to that last sentence that I just read. But just yeah, it's so you can be mean, you can dislike something, but it just sounds like he's just like purposely being mean, during this review. Um, he says that I think he eat at home, and he calls it the back seat, or sitting in the back seat of my car. He calls it. He doesn't even know the correct title to
No,
the
clown.
album. Yeah. So he says those are the 2 best songs on the album. He says this of Three Legs. They do strange and pointless things to the sound of his voice to liven it up. Uncle Albert sounds like the worst piece of light music Paul has ever done. Monkberry Moon Delight is the bore to end all bores. And he calls Heart of the Country the lowest point on the album. So yeah, pretty tough. And the reviews online, you can read it, and and he talks about stuff, his Beatles stuff, and how John was there to be, the person to control Paul's music, as he said so much in the How Do You Sleep song. But
I think Paul,
you getting
I think
go ahead.
I think Paul had a song with John on that album.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's
too many
it.
people.
That's
too many people.
Too many
Right.
people. Too many people. Yeah.
Right. But you didn't know that at the time, though, right?
Or did you? Or did you know? Did you? Or did you have a feeling then when you knew that was about John, or no?
It sounded very personal to me, and I knew how tight they were, and the rancor from the breakup and everything else. I thought at the time that it could have been directed at him.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but it's so well known now. But in 1971, it's all coded messages and lyrics. So you're guessing. Like, it's so easy to say now.
You got to read the lyrics.
Right.
Well, you couldn't read the lyrics.
You couldn't then. Yeah.
Right, but you couldn't because there was no lyrics included with it. You see?
Right.
But you listen, and then you play it again, and you play it.
Yeah.
That's why you're gonna have a lot of skips if you go to play that record.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure there's quite a few.
You'll ruin a needle or two.
The the line "too many people preaching practices." Did you pick up on that being the part that was written about John, or did you discover that later on?
I always felt it was directed mainly, and it was like a breakup kind of emotional packed album with a lot of references to that in that song.
Right. You took
You
your
know,
lucky
that might have
break
been
and
more,
broken.
might have been more towards George.
Yeah, could have been. But let's just talk about the album as a whole. I
Right.
mean, musically, like you would, I think you can still think it's probably one of his best records, right? You felt then and now, right? Still.
Yeah, there were some that I'm not going to jump up and down about, but
Mhm.
uh, overall, I really like the album,
Okay.
which I
Dear
left
Boy,
downstairs.
Yeah.
that's okay.
Dear Boy,
Well,
it also has John notes in it, I think.
no, see, that's another one you thought initially it could be about John, but it's actually not about
Right.
John. It's about Linda's ex-husband, but John thought it was about him.
Okay.
Which he did. He
Well,
did, but
I'm not on it like you are, but that's how I felt at the time.
right.
Well, again, yeah, because you're hearing these lyrics, you don't get to read the lyrics, but you're hearing it, and then I mean that's all you can do is just speculate that it could be about John at that time, because it does sound so close to their relationship.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely sounds like it could have been they could have been talking about each other.
And even Three Legs, I've always been under the the assumption that Three Legs is meaning the other three Beatles. That's how I thought too. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, I can't. You listen to it and you can
That was,
kind of like.
I thought that
Go
was.
ahead.
Go ahead,
What's
Dad.
that?
I was just gonna say a hat tip to the blues.
Yeah.
Oh, you think
Okay.
so?
Right.
Southern rock blues, Memphis blues.
Okay.
Right. The other thing about the
mean,
record too. The other thing about the record too is it's credited to Paul and Linda McCartney. Did you have any thoughts on that when you first got the record?
Well, everybody knew that Linda was not a professional, and that Paul was
Right.
sitting there in for whatever his own reasons, and trying to maybe make her into a star. That's we kind of overlooked her a little bit,
Right. Yeah.
To be honest, I mean,
Yeah. What did you think of her
not
contributions?
Like, not much.
Really? See, because for me,
yeah.
This album kind of sets the tone for what's to come. You know what I mean? In a way. I mean, one of the things that you think about when you think about Wings is those great backing vocals.
And the harmonies,
Yeah,
so it.
I'm just. I'm sure there were better backup singers available. Let me put it that way.
Fair enough.
But so yeah, I mean, obviously Ram, it comes out and it does very well, and it continues. The record, and you're buying albums a lot now at this point. I mean, you bought Ram, you bought Wildlife, but you didn't like Wildlife though, right, Dad? You didn't enjoy it, right?
No, I was disappointed with Wildlife.
Yeah.
I
always felt like it was kind of a step back, kind of like in the same way McCartney for me felt like a little bit of a step back, in a way. Here you got this great big production record, and then now you go back to like the homespun type feel again.
Yeah.
Since I left the album downstairs, and can you talk about some of the other songs on it?
Yeah, so like the Heart of the Country, Monkberry Moon Delight, Eat at Home, Long Haired Lady, the Backseat of My Car.
I'm
sure
Lady.
Yeah.
Okay.
Backseat of My Car.
Yeah.
Good
I mean,
one.
that was my number one when we counted down our top 101 McCartney songs. That was my number one.
Yeah.
Was the Backseat of My Car.
Great song. Great
Yeah,
song.
Not,
that was my
not,
my number one.
not Big Barn Bed.
No, not Big Barn Bed. No, no,
Okay.
no, no. If you had to pick a favorite, a favorite track on the whole album, what song are you gonna pick?
Um, maybe Long Haired Lady, or
Oh, wow.
it's got a lot of nice. The melody to it is really nice. Backseat of my
Right.
car.
Yeah.
You
It's
mean
funny though
you're
that
not
you
gonna
pick.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Tom. Go ahead.
No,
No,
I'm
go
just
ahead.
saying it's funny that he picks Long Hair Lady because that's filled with Linda's, backing vocals on it.
True.
Yeah, it's a lot of give and take on it.
Yeah.
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 You mean your
I,
favorite's not?
really,
Go ahead.
I kind of block her out and I listen to Paul more. He does tee it up a little bit.
Right. Well, you tell me. You mean you don't like "Smile Away"? Is your "Smile Away" is that your favorite song on the album?
Well, I can't talk about it without talking about my brother Ed.
No, no, we
We
can't.
used to tease him with that song all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That probably
His
got the
feet
most
a mile away.
airtime in our.
Plenty of airtime with that song. Woo! Yeah. But I knew, I just judging from your record collection, I knew what you had, and that's how I made my foray into the music because you had it. So you had these albums, That's how I was able to learn.
Truth be told, I never really forced any kind of music on Andy at all. He actually was more of a Chicago guy. Peter Cetera in particular.
Oh yeah.
When he first started listening to music. And they were there. All my albums were there. So now they're up there, but that's okay.
Well, I was gonna bring that up too. Kind of passing the music down to the next generation. You said you really never forced this music out onto any of your kids. Then I would imagine, right?
No. I mean, probably when they were teens and older growing up, I had very little Beatles stuff on the air playing in our house at the time.
Right.
We get some, not as much as when it was just me and my wife Fran, or Andy was little. Kind of it grew. We'll put it that way.
Right.
My son Tom picked up on Back to the Irish. What was the other one? I can't remember the name of the other song.
Luck of the Irish.
The Luck of the Irish. He would just start
singing
it on his own. Probably about 7 or 8.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Well, I'll take a small credit for that because I'll take a small credit for that because they were kind of brainwashed into all this music and they didn't really have a choice. I did that to them, but he didn't do that to me.
Okay.
But they also could sing. They could also sing Boris the Spider.
Yeah.
I see as get as low as possible.
Oh yeah, good memories with that one.
Yeah. Before we talk about seeing Paul live, talk about a little bit about 80s on and with Paul. Were you still following Paul into the 80s and later decades? And if not, tell us just why you just didn't feel like continuing to follow Paul.
I kind of went in another direction with Paul. Mainly, I felt that he was a little repetitious, and not to say that there wouldn't be a couple of songs on each of his albums that I would like, but it didn't move me enough to go run it out and get the album.
Yeah. Plus you had kids to worry about.
Well,
that didn't mean I stopped listening to music.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's always a way to continue to listen to your favorite musician with kids or without kids, So
Sure.
I mean, so if you didn't eat dinner one night, who cares? What cares? I got the new McCartney record.
That's it, man. That's all I cared about.
No, I just my taste changed. I wouldn't say you know, the quality of his music stayed the same, and but
Right.
my musical likes went other ways.
Mhm. Gotcha. So you weren't one of those people that would say, "Well, Paul hasn't done anything good since, the Wings days, or he hasn't done anything good since, Tug of War." I mean, you wouldn't be one of those people. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people, you'll see some older fans that will say, Paul hadn't done anything good since this particular record. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not one for being negative. I mean,
Mm,
he's out there. People are buying it. They like it.
right.
It's just not my cup of tea. At this time. Pipes of
Right.
Peace, things like that. London Town.
Yeah.
Some of those were really, really good records,
Okay.
and I'm not going
Fair
to knock
enough.
them.
Right. Fair enough. 76 tour. I hear you got to go to a show.
Yeah, I was in Great Lakes Naval Station at the time, and
Okay.
they would post tickets and shows up in the different places on the base.
Hmm.
And me and a couple of guys grabbed them and went down into Chicago. I think it was the Cow Palace or something. I'm not really sure of the name. Something like
Mm.
something to do with cows or bulls or something.
Was it indoor or outdoor, Dad?
In
Indoor.
Indoor. Indoor. Yeah. Um, I would imagine had to have been a pretty magical night.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean,
definitely. I mean,
you're familiar with a lot of the songs, I would imagine too.
yeah, I mean, I know them with the first few chords. When they start going, I know what's coming on, and all.
Right.
If I couldn't tell you the whole set list, but it was
Right.
enjoyable.
Were you excited
I
when he
can.
would play Beatles songs? Because I mean, this was the first time he started to celebrate his past.
I think he did. I think he finished with one or two. I don't
Well,
know
he
if he.
did. He did a couple. No, he did in the '76 tour. He did in the middle of the show. He did 5 Beatles songs. He did "Yesterday,"
Okay. Blackbird.
"Blackbird,"
I've just seen a face.
"Long and Winding Road," and "I've Just Seen a Face." So you got to see those. So I mean, but it was a big deal then because he hadn't really played any Beatles songs. So, but I mean, most of his set really centered around the Wings material, which by that time you were really obviously very familiar with, having bought Venus and Mars, and you knew Speed of Sound, you knew Band on the Run, and that became the act. It was Wings was the act at that point, which you knew.
Yeah, and I remember him. He was be questioned a lot about, hey, how come you're not playing any Beatles stuff? And he
Right.
was really trying to promote Wings, and he goes, I'm in another
Right.
band now. I got my other band's got got these songs. I want to sing them. And believe me, I understand the desire to hear the old stuff, but I understood him wanting to do the new ones too.
But were you there going, man, I wish I heard Hey Jude, or were you happy that you were hearing the Wings material?
I was happy with whatever they decided to play. Are you kidding? Who are you in the audience saying? I'm not there with a lighter saying "Free Bird, Free Bird."
Right.
No, I don't do that.
Did you have an opportunity to see George in the '74 tour?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I would
yeah.
love to hear people's stories about that one, just because of again, his voice, and him changing the lyrics to some of the
Yeah,
songs.
he was a little rough then, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was not a very well
That
received.
was a rough fit.
Yeah, that
Right.
was not a good tour for
I
him.
I had those days. I had seen the Allman Brothers,
Right.
Jimi Hendrix a couple of
Oh, you got to
times.
see Hendrix. Wow.
Yeah.
The ill-fated Monkeys tour, or just on his own?
No, it was with Band of Gypsies,
Okay.
Buddy
All right.
Guy,
Yep.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Mitch Mitchell
and
on drums.
actually a New Year's Eve concert.
Hmm.
Wow.
I was
Was that
still in.
was that at the Fillmore, Dad, or no?
Yes, it was.
With Fillmore East? Yeah.
Wow.
No more East.
Wow.
Wow.
And then he did a show on Randall's Island. Um, and a lot of the people who were at Woodstock were at the show. That was an open air venue, and it's another 3-day music festival. I wasn't there for the 3 days. I was there for most of one day.
Mm. Let's dig into the
Randall's
Prog
Island,
thing a
Even though what that?
I was going to say Randall's Island, although it's in the middle of the city, it's not the easiest place to get to.
No, it's not. No. Go ahead, Tom.
No, so let's just jump into the Prog thing a little bit, because one, my original co-host of the show, he was a big Prog guy. Andy's a big Prog guy, and I mean, obviously now you're a big Prog guy. I mean, what was the appeal of that music for you?
I thought it was innovative. My first draw was Emerson, Lake and Palmer, who my memory might not be the best right now, but I'm not sure who was opening for who, but it was Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and Yes, and the was called the Palladium at the time, Lower Manhattan,
Okay.
and I kind of think that Roundabout was a big song that was being played on the radio at the time, and I wanted to hear more of that type of music. And of course, Carnival Number 9 and Brain Salad Surgery and all that from ELP. I might be jumping ahead a little bit, but
all the same era. But to go from a Beatles pop world into Prog, it's
right.
It's a lot of people don't do that often, So it's an interesting switch up.
Yeah, I love the Beatles, and that what started me on my musical journey, so to speak. But it had many branches. I mentioned Steely Dan, I mentioned Jimi Hendrix. I also was into the Doors and the Who.
Did
King Crimson?
yeah, no, that's what I was just gonna say. So did Yes and ELP kind of like gravitate you then towards like King Crimson, Genesis, Rush, a little Jethro Tull as well?
Tull, right?
I didn't get a chance to see those guys play, but all of that music is kind of where I went following the Beatles breakup.
Wow. Well, it's definitely a big switch. I mean, it sounds like you're a huge fan of UK bands as well.
Yeah, okay, I'll grant you that. There's well, Andy's going to tell you that I'll listen to folk music, I'll listen to country music, whatever is pleasing to my ear and it speaks to me in some way.
Right.
I'm not gonna.
No,
I'm
same
not
way.
gonna.
Yeah.
Not gonna diss anything.
Right.
The only thing I can't get into too much would be the heavy metal stuff, the headbanging stuff.
Understood.
And,
yeah, understandable. Yeah.
And
I'm slowly trying to get. I know we talked about the 80s Chicago, and I was a big fan too. Being born in '73. And those great Chicago albums of those mid '80s with Pizza Terra, was a big part of my life as well. But then I gravitated towards those first Terry Kath years of Chicago, and trying to get Andy to listen to more, or he has been listening to more of that. And for me, I mean that's where it's at. Well, I mean that maybe a little just a slight touch of Prog in there, but more just the fusion of rock and jazz and so many other different styles of music with them. Just really it's very relatable to me, to the my ear too.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why you kind of get all these other genres. Within Prog, you get elements of classical, like ELP. It does what's the pictures at an exhibition, Dan, right? ELP, right?
Yeah.
So,
you look somewhere in your library, you'll see it there.
Oh yeah, it's there. It's there.
Yeah.
Didn't you see also? Didn't you see the Beach Boys in Chicago too? Did you see that tour or no?
Yes. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Beach Boys, Tom Scott and the LA Express, Jesse Colin Young without the Young Bloods, Joni Mitchell. I was at Freeport racetrack on Long Island. It had to be
Mhm.
close to 300,000 people there.
Wow.
Back
Speaking
when,
of,
well, but
yeah,
back when there was like multiple, like in the concert you've talked about going to, like now we go to a concert, we go to see one act. Back then, when you in your concert going days, 3 or 4 artists would share the bill, and it was a whole big, it would
right.
go on all night, right? Like the concert, pretty much, Dad,
Yeah.
like till
Oh,
all hours.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a whole day affair.
Yeah, I mean, they still do, stuff like that. They get like, 3 or 4, you know,
Festivals, yeah,
festival type shows. I mean, they're doing it right now with what Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Joan Jett's on that tour as well.
yeah.
So I mean, it still happens, but I mean, obviously the bands aren't as maybe
Not
iconic as.
not those not bands that you saw, man. These guys
Uh,
we gotta make a film about all the people you've
right.
seen. I wish they kept the ticket stubs.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
But
Back when you
We
didn't
ended
have
up
to pay for
in the, in
Yeah,
the,
back when you didn't have to
in the
pay four
closed.
grand for a ticket like the Boss and McCartney
yeah,
now,
no,
right?
but it's a you may I think it was a different time. Like you and I collect things differently now, and we
Right.
collectors. I think my dad will tell you, like you bought albums, you brought them to play, and you brought them to parties. They weren't collectibles. You went to a concert, you didn't keep a stub. It wasn't as such a collecting thing back then. You went to go, you bought an album because you liked it, you shared it, you whatever. You went to a concert and that was it. It wasn't this whole big thing that it's turned into now, right, Dad? Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, you might be the only one with that album. Then your friends whose house you were going to, hey, could you bring that McCartney album, or could you bring that Doors album, whatever. And it would go, and you leave it there for a week or two. That's how it
Yeah.
was. Take
Then
time, call,
yeah, you
come
see
back
so
with
many
come
people
back with
writing
8 or
their
9.
yeah, you see so many people writing their names on the records back then. You know.
Yeah, so I think his name's on it right here too.
Doing other
There
things,
it
doing other
is.
things with it. Oh, okay.
His name's on it. See,
That's great.
yours,
Ed's name?
yours.
Okay.
Oh yeah, not Ed's. Uncle Ed's name's not on there, is it?
No, this is yours. This is yours. This is your copy. See, there's no spine even. See how beat up this is, Tom?
Oh wow, yeah. Damn. That was definitely well played.
This,
Definitely well
yeah, this
well
was
traveled and well played.
yes, multiple moves over in 50 years.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this was great. Thank you very much, John, for
Thank
talking
you.
about your experience. Yeah. Andy, anything
I
else you
appreciate
want to?
being on and being able to tell you some of the things that happened in my musical listening life.
No, this is great. We love it, especially
no,
getting first generation fans talking about the that listening to it, listening in real time. I mean, it's really a treat to hear people's thoughts and get their takes on these events that happen once a year as
right.
new albums come out.
When they came out, and that's the it's not too many people share that with us these days. So it was I know somebody who can tell us about it because he lived it. So I was happy to have you on, and I'm glad you could come on. So I appreciate it, Dad.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yep.
Yeah, no problem. Well, go ahead, Andy.
So that's gonna wrap it up for us. Tom, what do you have in the pipeline coming up for Talk More Talk?
Well, at this point, when this gets aired, I have no clue.
Right, because this isn't gonna. Well, we're recording
Yeah.
this a few weeks before this is gonna
Yeah.
drop.
Yeah.
This episode's dropping actually the weekend that Beatle Fest Chicago is happening, of which
Right.
I'll be at. So hopefully I'll see some of you all at Chicago at the fest. Come say hello. Kid O'Toole will be there, and Tom and I will be doing some live sessions as well on our channel
Look
from
forward
the
to that.
fest. Yep, Radio Row style. For those of you who know what that means. I'll be there. So that's when this episode's dropping. So we'll hope to see some people that weekend. Talk More Talk is rolling on. And what else is in the pipeline for Two Legs, Tom?
Well, I'm sure we're going to have a couple more installments of things we bought yesterday and today posted by the time this episode is posted. And I'm sure we'll have by this time maybe have interviewed John Blaney, author of the songs he was singing series, and as well as artist Jeff Cummins, as we know as the artist that from so many different works of McCartney's, such as the Thrillington album, the inner sleeve or the inner gatefold of Wings Over America. You got the Say picture sleeve, this one picture sleeve, temporary secretary picture sleeve. So much work that he's done throughout McCartney's career, and we unfortunately we had to postpone an earlier recording with him, but he says that we're going to get it in soon. So hopefully by the time this is posted, we will have interviewed him as well. So yeah, a bunch of good stuff coming up
for the rest of the summer. Good to hear it. Thank you, partner. So for Tom, for my dad John, this is Andy from Two Legs signing off, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Peace and love.